Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing we call life. And what better to make it through life than with a dress watch from the most famous watchmaker in all the world? That's right. Today, we're talking about the Prince. Let's go crazy. This is probably the least heralded Rolex model in all of history. Its relatively small production run, I think, is a testament to that. The Cellini Prince is probably one of the most unique, if not the most unique dress line Rolex has ever come out with, mainly because it's a square case, and that's not something Rolex is known for. That's not something you would identify as a Rolex when you saw it. Rolex probably realized that, which is why they made it for such a relatively small period of time, but it is such a fascinating watch, and if you love really traditional square cases and dress pieces, well, this is the watch for you. Just because it's not Rolex's bread and butter doesn't mean they didn't do a hell of a job on this watch. That's basically the three things that all three of these have in common. At SwissWatchExpo, we are blessed enough that our new arrival selection actually has one in both yellow, white, and rose gold. And that's not the only thing that's different between these watches. As you can see, they have different dials. In fact, even their case shapes are a little bit different rather than just being rectangular. So let's just go ahead and dive in and see. The ones that I'm most familiar with, I think, and probably the one that was produced the widest, was going to be the rose gold model. This is one that you might be the most familiar with. I say might because I still talk to people who are not familiar with this model whatsoever. And a lot of people are very pleasantly surprised when they see that Rolex makes such a unique square case. A couple of things that make this watch fantastic. It's not just that it's rectangular. Lots of other watchmakers have made rectangular dress watches. The shape of this, and all three of these in particular, are absolutely fascinating. One thing that I'll notice here, while the dial is beautiful, this shape is so incredibly elegant. This is not a flat crystal. This whole thing actually curves along with sort of the shape of the side of this case. And the crystal does so as well, which makes it so incredibly elegant and well made. So this is definitely a piece with just a fantastic dress piece. But at 28 millimeters across, 47 millimeters tall, this is still a fairly prominent dress piece. This is not going to be super dainty. I don't even consider this to be a unisex watch either because of one, how high it is, and two, just how thick this case is as well. This is definitely a case that is sort of showing off its design and one that, definitely has a lot of prominence on the wrist there. The dial itself is something you're going to find in all Cellini Princes, is that you're going to have more than one dial. The second hand, if it comes with one at all, which in this case I think they all three do, it is going to be offset here at 6 o'clock with a smaller dial showing the hours and minutes above here at 12. This is something that I think is a bit iconic of the Prince. The original Prince actually predates the Cellini altogether, going way, way back to the foundation of the Rolex brand in the first place, back when square watches were a lot more in vogue, I think, than they are now. So of course, Rolex felt like they really need to get into that sort of market, which is where the Prince was born from. Once they started transitioning to more tool-based watches, more sport-based watches, the Cellini fell by the wayside and the Cellini Prince fell by the wayside and did not get reintroduced until 2005. So there was a long time when Rolex was just out of the square watch game altogether, and for reasons I'm not 100% sure I could even surmise, they decided to bring it back, and it was not a big hit. But you know what? At SwissWatchExpo, we've got a ton of love for some watches that maybe were not appreciated in their heyday, and this Cellini Prince, all three of these are definitely one of them. My favorite dial amongst all three, though, has to be this white gold one, though. This one is fierce. A lot of color going on here too, not just the silver sort of sunburst guilloche type pattern that you have here, but a lot more color. You get a black border, and the actual like hash marks here are a combination of white and red. So there's a lot going on here. This is definitely the loudest dial out of all three. The least dressy, still definitely a dressy shaped case, but this dial is very fierce compared to the other two. And you do get the oversized Arabic numerals here at 3, 6, and 9, which is something else that makes it, I think, a bit more contemporary than these other two. Another thing that makes this one, or each of these, sort of unique in their own, is if you compare it to the shape of this. The thing that I loved about the rose gold one was sort of the curvature of the case and the way that this crystal sort of matches it perfectly. Now that's not taking place here with this one. You'll see here, one, we have sort of a stepped sort of pattern here where the bezel edge actually gives way to a slightly wider case, which is something that I didn't really realize until I started studying this watch up close. And this actually has a much flatter, if not a perfectly flat, crystal over the top. So while this is not only a Cellini Prince, but a Cellini Prince from the same generation as the one that I just showed you in rose gold, they actually made a lot of changes to the case in between the white, the yellow, and the rose gold, which I think is so incredibly unique and also not really in keeping with the DNA of the Rolex brand. The lack of consistency, I think, is something that really does make each piece unique, but also might have something to do with why each piece didn't exactly have the longest production run of some of the more top-selling Rolex sport models. This does come with a beautiful lizard skin strap, beautiful butterfly deployant, which I didn't even show you on the other one. But this is something that all three of these watches have in common. So it does open from the center. Again, similar to the way that like a Cartier tank would, one that came on a bracelet. And one thing that all three of these are going to have is an exhibition case back with a manual winding movement. So this is something that is going to be sort of a Cellini in spirit, at least from this generation. No automatic versions of the Prince. So this is one that you would need to wind every day. But as a dress piece, usually this is not going to be anyone's daily wear. This is going to be one when they have a really formal outfit that they want to add a little extra spark, a little extra flair to. This is definitely one that would get the job done. And perhaps my favorite all-around one is the metal that I see the least common. It's also my favorite metal of all. It's going to be yellow gold, as you can see. This one here is the most traditional out of all three. And it's not just because it's in yellow gold. This dial here is a lot more traditional. The Roman numerals, not Arabic numerals. Also the font of the numerals themselves, a little bit smaller. This is also going to have the smallest of all of the offset second hands at 6 o'clock. This is going to be the dial layout that is going to be most similar to the original Princes that came out way, way, way back at like practically the turn of the century. So this is going to be the most classic dial. One of the things that I think is most interesting about the shape is that this is sort of a blend between the white and the rose. This does have more of a curved case. However, they did keep the crystal a bit more flat than they did on the rose gold model. And they also have this sunburst sort of pattern that was on the white dial one. This has been sort of translated to the side of the case. I've not seen Rolex do a case design like this. I've not seen them engrave anything on the side of their cases before, ever. So if this is something that maybe you've always wanted in a Rolex watch, but Rolex as a brand just wasn't courteous enough to do that for you, well, guess what? This Cellini Prince is all factory original, and it does, in fact, have an engraved case side, and that's, again, something really unique to Rolex that I've never seen done before. A high polish finish on front, and actually all around this watch is completely high polished, so this is another thing that makes it a really, really classic dress piece. And the one thing I love that is just such old school cool with the yellow gold is going to be a burgundy colored reptile strap. Something about that color combination just screams mid-century modern, and it is absolutely gorgeous, but still super unique because, again, there's a lot of square case dress watches out here. There's not many that are going to have the thickness of this, not many that are going to have this shape here, and not many that are going to be made from Rolex, because that's something that's going to make it very unique, something you might even have to explain to some of your Rolex aficionado friends, because I cannot tell you how many bona fide collectors are not familiar with the Prince line at all. And that is just a shame, because they absolutely should be. These are all beautiful watches, and these are all hard to find. I would be willing to bet that we're the only online dealer that's got 3 different Princes and 3 different metals that are ready for you to have on your wrist in as little as a day. And of course, if dress watches aren't your thing, or you only want Rolex watches that you are familiar with and you have heard of before, please do not hesitate to give us a call, because we've got more than I could even begin to describe on this video. Like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. Please shoot us an email and give us a call, because we've got the watch for you at SwissWatchExpo.com.